So these, I mean, but all of this finally comes down to, do we find a balance between contribution, between insurance, and between taxation? And I think the balance of that rests with taxation. And I think that the taxation answer is not something that's going to come from tobacco. It's not going to come from alcohol taxes. It's not going to come from taxing high-emitting or large motor cars. I don't disagree. All of them must be taxed and taxed exponentially higher than they are. But finally, taxation has to come from taxing incomes. And there may be some even in this room who are uncomfortable with it. It's not about just taxing the very rich. It's about taxing everybody. It's building a system of taxation by lowering at every point in society, lowering the tax threshold, not raising it. And I know it hurts many in this room, but we have, over the last 60 years, created a political economy of the middle class, which craves tax breaks, a constant and belligerent attempt to constantly raise the tax threshold. And what we've achieved in the last 6 years is nothing that we achieved in our history. We've seen our taxes personal income taxes wiped out. We said that the NDA government led by the BJP was right-wing. They raised the tax threshold once. They didn't have, if I can go treat this like a gate meeting, unki औकात नहीं थी कि वो दूसरी बार करेंगे. The UPA government has raised taxes budget after budget. And I want to say what those taxes mean. If we talk about financing healthcare, I want to take the entire point about tax and expenditure to another part of the social system. Last year, after the May general election, the finance minister said in his budget speech, our party is committed to maintaining a 100 rupee real wage for the NREGA. That was a commitment. Now, most people, other than probably Dr. Negri, know the NREGA. I will take 5 minutes to explain it to him after this lecture. The NREGA, achieved in full, brings a rural household 10,000 rupees a year. Yeah? 100 rupees wages, 100 days work a year. At the highest income group, so this was only a line in the speech. There was no commitment, there was no legislation, there was no nothing. In fact, NREGA wages were frozen in January 2009 and remain frozen 24 months down the road. In the same budget, at the highest tax slab, the highest earners in this country took a tax break of 50,000 rupees. What this tells me is that the political economy of India is that when you give or you redistribute, you are only seen to redistribute, but actually also give to the rich. Otherwise, this polity is unsustainable. And I literally mean this, that from 10,000, what the poor got, if by struggling, by holding dharnas, by holding pickets, by filing RTIs, they get 10,000 rupees per family. A rich household took back 50,000 in hard cash. That certainly took care of their food price, double-digit food price inflation many times over. So our fundamental challenge is actually challenging the rules of redistributive justice. If you actually just separate the NREGA expenditure year on year since the NREGA was introduced, and you look at tax breaks and personal income taxes alone, no other tax, you will find that every year more than 1 rupee was foregone in income taxes through the tax breaks than spent on the NREGA. And to me, there's a very clear quid pro quo over there. So I do not disagree with Dr. Reddy that we have to raise other taxes. I do not disagree with him that it's very much more than financing. But I think we need to understand that we have a very fundamental financing problem. Indians like to point out that Brazil has one of the highest inequities in the world. It does. It's 6th from the top in the Gini coefficient. But you know, economics is not just about absolute numbers. It's not what Brazil is, but it's also about what's happening. What Brazil has experienced in the last 10 years, and I think we need to recognize that Brazil shaved off 2 points of its Gini coefficient. It's only 1 in 2 countries in the world that shaved off 2 points in its Gini coefficient. The other is China, which tells you something about how hard it is to knock off 2 points in your Gini coefficient. It's a country whose real wages have risen. It's a country whose real expenditure has expanded on healthcare and every kind of other social security and social service. And I think we need to look at all of these things. We need to look at where these possibilities lie, how they're achieved. I mean, it's staggering to think of the fact that there's a country in the world, there's a third world country in the world that has a 36% tax to GDP ratio. That is, in my world, at least an awesome achievement. I mean, you know, when it goes from 12.5 to 13 in India, even we on the left celebrate and think, oh, well, something is happening out here. But I think we need to really look at the depth of our crisis, the depth of our problem if we're to solve these problems. They're not going to happen overnight. And I certainly speak as a trade unionist. With every budget, there's a clamor amongst the formal sector membership. The threshold must go up. And I'll come back, and I think that is the principle of universality. It's our collective job to build a political culture that also says that taxes for universal benefit, society has to have progressive taxes. And if there are 70% of the poor, of those who do not eke out a decent consumption, however defined, then the other 30% are going to have to pay taxes, and every one of those 30% are going to have to pay taxes. They may then get it back in the form of social security. They may then get it back in the form of universal health privilege. They may then get it back in the form of old age pensions. But the point is, you have to put that money forward in order to be able to distribute it evenly, fairly, and build a sustainable system. And I'm going to end actually by saying that I think the 2 papers were extremely useful contributions in our debate. I think we're just beginning this debate in this country. We need to be very specific about what we're looking at, and we also need to, get rid of our wishful thinking and see how we're going to achieve it in a meaningful, sustainable, and realistic way. Thanks very much.